Guess who is in a wild card spot in the Eastern Conference? Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Wednesday, 25th of March, 2026. Vic and Neil joining you. You're at UBS Arena on Tuesday evening, and so I had to hold the fort down. And before we get to the answer of the question that we just opened with, I had a new all-time high last night. I had all 12 games up. That started between 7 and 8 o'clock.
Wow, that's impressive. How many devices?
Funny you should ask, because you have to have the right configuration between ESPN Plus and DirecTV Stream, because you can only get into a maximum of 3 receptions on each of those platforms. And so I used my laptop for the game between Tampa Bay and Minnesota. And I also had the Bruins Maple Leafs game on there as well. So I kind of split the screen there. But then on the digital or the Apple devices, I was able to put the multi-box up. So I had 3 on my TV, 3 on my iPad, and 4 on my phone.
See, if you had DAZN and 3 different things, for example, the television, the laptop, and a monitor, you could have 12 on 3 devices.
Well, I have to do that because the games that were on cable, the Bruins are local to me. So they're blacked out. I cannot get them on any of the digital platforms. So I have to use DirecTV for that, and I have to use that for TNT also. There's a whole strategy behind this.
But there again, if you had DAZN, there are no blacked out games.
You know what I have right now? I've got a headache. So now we're going to start.
Yes, and I had 1 game up last night.
Yes,
that was
I know
the
you did.
New York Islanders hosting the Chicago Blackhawks.
We're not starting there. We are starting with a team that really deserves to be where they are this morning, and that is the Ottawa Senators, who get back-to-back road wins. They win at Madison Square Garden 2-1 over the Rangers, holding New York to 10 shots. This was 9 shots, and then an additional shot was awarded somewhere in that first period on Monday night's game. Had it been 9, that would have been the lowest shot total by any team in the salary cap era. In that game with the Rangers, the Senators lost Thomas Chabot with a right arm, right wrist injury. He was hit by JT Miller. And then fellow defenseman Lassie Thompson left early in the second period. So the Senators wound up holding the Rangers to 10 shots, despite having only 4 defensemen to play the last 37 minutes of that game. And they were missing now 5 defensemen overall. So when they get on the plane and they go to Detroit, they call up their first round pick, 7th pick overall in 2024, Carter Yakimchuk, and in his first NHL game, gets a goal and an assist for 3-2 win in Detroit. Linus Ullmark with 32 saves. The Senators wake up this morning in wild card 2.
Let's go back to Madison Square Garden and Thomas Chabot. It wasn't a hit by JT Miller. It was a vicious cross-check across the wrist where he had no padding, and that's why Chabot had to leave the game. Player safety should look at stuff like this because that was bad. That probably wasn't the worst thing JT Miller did in that game, though. Probably putting his skates on was worse. And as far as the young kid for Ottawa, that was a tremendous night to play your first game. And what a win to win in Detroit. What a deflating win for the Red Wings to know you're sitting there waiting for Ottawa to get in, and yet you couldn't win in your own barn against a team that you must win against. So that drops Detroit now to a point behind Ottawa after being in front of them for so long. And Ottawa has the regulation wins on this. Ottawa's got the most regulation wins of all the competitive bubble teams. And by the way, what happened to the Bubble Lock Challenge this year?
He got replaced by Smith's picks.
Anyway, I regress. Great win for Ottawa Senators and Travis Green. Short-staffed and horrible loss for the Red Wings, who got their captain back for that game and still weren't able to get it together. And they had John Gibson in net.
I think in that game on Tuesday, we saw the grit that got Ottawa into the playoffs last year, and Detroit falling back once again, 3-5-2 in their last 10. And you remember they also had that loss to the Bruins late on Saturday night, so they couldn't even get that game in overtime. And you're kind of seeing this signature that has been the Red Wings over the past 9 seasons of being in there for a while and then slipping back. There's still time here, but the runway's getting short.
And it doesn't get any easier for the Red Wings because their next game is in Western New York against the Buffalo Sabres. And then after that, they go home to play the Philadelphia Flyers, who don't play the night before. You're going to get the Red Wings going back home tired. So they're going to have to muster up what Ottawa mustered up on these 2 games in order to have a chance to scrape their way back in.
That game against the Flyers will be on ABC on Saturday evening. So speaking of bad losses, how about the New York Islanders? Anders Lee scored 49 seconds into that game. You thought that they were off and running, and then the Blackhawks scored the next 4. The Islanders stormed back to make it 4-3 because they always manage to do this high wire act of falling behind by multiple goals. They've come back so many times this year, not on this night.
I got to understand or try to understand why Patrick Roy started David Riddick in this hugely important game. These games coming down the stretch, I mean, if you're going to wear your goalie out, now's the time to wear him out. And you've got an excuse for doing it because you want to get in the playoffs. David Riddick allowed 3 goals in that first period. Roy yanked him at that point and put Sorokin in, who only let in 1 more after that for the rest of the game. And in the third period, Chicago basically was barring the door and trying to keep the Islanders at bay. They were just trying to hang on for the win. They were giddy about getting the win. It wasn't a good atmosphere when you start off scoring that early in the game and then end up somehow losing the game. And everybody in that building knows that Chicago is a rebuilding team near the bottom of the league. They're a non-playoff team. The game you had to win, and you didn't.
You can only go to the well so often and fall behind by multiple goals because at some point it's going to catch up to you. And this is just one of a couple of other red flags here. Another one is that games played column. The Islanders have 85 points. They are in wild card 3, even with Ottawa, and a point behind Boston. But those 2 teams have games in hand. And the other thing that was such a benefit for the Islanders, that 10-0 overtime record, that will come back to bite them in terms of that first tiebreaker because the Islanders only have 26 regulation wins compared to Ottawa's 32 and the Bruins 29. And if Detroit or Columbus or Pittsburgh, they come into play in this as well, they're behind all of those teams. And so the Islanders have effectively boxed themselves into a very tough corner here after being in a very advantageous position for the better part of the second half of the season.
And it doesn't get any easier because tomorrow night the Dallas Stars go into UBS Arena to play against the Islanders. And you can't imagine that Dallas is very happy with themselves right now, having lost at home to the New Jersey Devils last night. So they come in really wanting to get their ship righted as well. So as I said, things don't get any easier for that team.
Another bad loss. Go figure this one. Boston Bruins lose 4-2 to Toronto. Bruins entered that game at TD Garden with a 26-9-1 record. They get outshot 35-20. They give up 2 power play goals. One was into an empty net and a shorthanded goal. So the antithesis of what the Bruins have been about all season in their own barn.
Yeah, and the Bruins clearly fell asleep in this one, taking Toronto too lightly, I guess. I don't know how you take a team lightly when you're, trying to stay in the wild card race, but evidently they did. That was one of the crummier games this season for Boston, who have played better than almost everybody expected.
We had Phil Bourque on NHL Wraparound on Monday, and right at the end of the show, you had made mention of the Colorado Avalanche coming in to Pittsburgh. And this was a revenge game for the Avs, you have to figure, because about a week or so ago, the Avs got thumped by the Penguins in Colorado by a 7-2 score. No such problem on this night. A 6-2 win for the Avs over the Penguins, who did not have Evgeny Malkin. Upper body injuries listed day to day. It was a 4-goal first period for the Avalanche. Nathan MacKinnon with his league-leading 46th goal. And while the Penguins are still sitting third in the Metro, Colorado now running away with the President's Trophy after spinning their wheels for a little bit.
And every team does, but I would imagine that Jared Bednar is happy that they're starting to heat up again as we get closer to the playoffs, and they're getting their injuries back as well.
Two of the players that you mentioned coming back for the Avalanche, Logan O'Connor, playing his first game of the season since undergoing hip surgery, and Ross Colton returned after missing 6 games. Let's go from the bad losses in the East to a couple of good wins. The Canadiens with a 5-2 win over the Hurricanes. Montreal spotted Carolina 2-goal lead after about 7 minutes. But Cole Caulfield is 44th. Ivan Demidov and Juraj Slafkovsky, a goal and an assist apiece. And JakubDobes, 41 saves for Montreal.
Amazing. And what a time to come up big for the Montreal Canadiens and against a great Carolina team. And I say great, and I mean it. They're probably the class of the East along with Buffalo, and their amazing season they've had. So big win for Montreal, big win for Marty St. Louis, the coach of the Canadiens, and looks like they're ensuring themselves a playoff spot for sure.
88 points, third in the Atlantic. Let's just turn over to the Canes for a second. Freddie Anderson was in goal. 4 goals on 18 shots.
It happens. I didn't get to see the game, so I don't know whether they were bad goals or not. But Dobeš clearly won that game.
I think to any Carolina fan watching out there, they have seen this act before. Good goal, bad goal. It's only 18 shots. And until he shows different.
You just love to beat Freddie Anderson up. You just love it. You can't wait till a game when he loses and then say, here we go again. We've seen this all before. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Have we not seen this movie before?
We've seen this movie with a lot of goalies where they have a bad game. I mean, put Bussy in that then. I mean,
Bussy's going to be their guy. Bussy has to be their guy.
That's fine. That's fine. But you talk about him like he's a minor league goalie.
He's not. He's a good goalie, but he's not championship caliber until he shows different. And I don't think he's going to.
But how many are championship caliber? Only 1 per year.
You know what? I'm going to book you a one-way ticket to Denmark so that you can take care of Anderson over there and praise him all you want.
I mean, there's only one champion per year, and that starting goaltender gets anointed as a championship caliber. The rest of them are still trying to get there, and Freddie Anderson's one of them.
I'll see you in the playoffs. Another big win on Tuesday, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who leapfrogged the Penguins into second place in the Metro with a 3-2 win over Philadelphia. Blue Jackets 19-3-4 under Rick Bowness, Zach Werenski, and Mason Marchment with a goal and an assist. They just keep rolling. They are able to lock games down the way they weren't able to early in the season. This is a very impressive team night after night after night.
It is. And Rick Bowness, I saw him at UBS Arena the other night. They lost that game 1-0. First shot on net went in, and nobody scored after that for the rest of the night. But he has done a remarkable job with Columbus, and he loves that group. He says they really play hard for each other. He told me, Jet Greaves, how about him? He has really started to shine for them. So Werenski's one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. I'm sure he'll be up for the Norris Trophy, along with the other obvious candidates. And I'd like Mason Marchment there. I know he's moved around a lot, but I think that he's played well for Columbus, and we'll find out if there's an issue with his personality if Columbus doesn't keep him, because I certainly think his on-ice play shows that he should be re-signed. But he's moved a lot. But Columbus is a great story this year after what happened to them not last summer, but the summer before. They weren't able to make it into the playoffs last year. And this year, they had a real tough start to their season, which caused Don Waddell to bring in Rick Bowness. And under Bowness, who's just a great guy, they have just been spectacular. 19-3-4, as you said.
Jet Greaves, that you had mentioned, stopped a breakaway and then a penalty shot by Noah Cates. So he looks like he has surpassed Elvis Merzlikins as the number one goaltender for the Blue Jackets.
Would you put him in the same category as Freddie Anderson?
I told you, I'll see you in the playoffs. Let's put a bow on the East. Should we do if the playoffs started today?
No, I don't think we need to do that crap.
Not happening. Okay. But in the Atlantic, Buffalo, 95 points, leads Tampa Bay by 2. The Lightning with a 6-3 win over the Minnesota Wild on Tuesday. Then Montreal with 88 points. Metropolitan Division, Carolina 96, Columbus 87, Pittsburgh 86. And in that wild card, the Bruins, wild card 1 with 86. Ottawa, wild card 2 with 85. Islanders also have 85 points, but they have played one more game than have the Senators. Detroit Red Wings, 84 points. Philadelphia, tough loss for them, not being able to come out with anything in that game against the Blue Jackets. They have 80. And then the Washington Capitals, who were shut out in St. Louis, have 79. But before we go over to the West, I want to go back to that slop in Madison Square Garden on Monday with the Rangers' futility with those 10 shots on goal. Before the game, they honored Mika Zibanejad for his 1,000th NHL game. And this is the effort that is put forth. And it's almost kind of in line with all of the theme nights that they've had at the Garden this year in honor of the Rangers' 100th anniversary season. Every time there's some sort of honor, the team manages to come out and play worse than they had the day before.
If that's possible. With the Rangers, they've played so poorly and so uninspired. You're right. I mean, there's not much you can say about this team. Someday we'll get into the Mike Sullivan part of this thing, who got paid a king's ransom to come to New York because he was Chris Drury's guy. Of course, they both are from Boston. What else would it be? David Quinn came back humbly after he'd already been fired by Drury as the head coach back a few years ago. And certainly nothing has worked. And, you know, it's amazing that Dan Muse goes from being an assistant coach in New York to the head coach of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh actually gets a lot better this season. Mike Sullivan goes from being the head coach of Pittsburgh to the head coach in New York, and New York goes backwards. And I'm not saying it's because of Mike Sullivan, but that is factually true.
It's under his guidance, but you look at the team that's on the ice, and I don't think it's due to lack of work ethic. They're just bad.
They are. They're just not a good team. But when you get past Zibanejad, honestly, what have you got? Everybody was tooting the horn of, oh, we got JT Miller. Yeah, well, do you still like him? You know, he's done nothing. In that game with Ottawa, the puck got turned over. He had a breakaway and missed the net. at the beginning of the game when I think Ottawa was out shooting them 10-0 or something. It's just a mess.
Let's go to another mess, although wasn't quite as sloppy on Tuesday. What did you call the Pacific Division?
The pathetic division.
Hey, that was good. Good line. Well, at least on Tuesday, two of the top three teams managed to win their games. Anaheim stays on top of that Pacific/pathetic division with a 5-3 win in Vancouver. Mikael Granlund with 2 goals, John Carlson with 3 assists, and they have a 5-point lead over the second place, Edmonton Oilers with a game in hand.
To let you know how pathetic it is, the Detroit Red Wings that we just talked about would be in first place in the Pacific Division with 84 points, 27 regulation wins, as opposed to the Ducks, who are in first place in the pathetic division with 84 points and 24 regulation wins. So Detroit would be real happy if they were in the pathetic division instead of being in the Atlantic. But they're in the Atlantic, and it's amazing the discrepancy between the two conferences this year.
98 points to get in the East as of this morning, and up to 89 in the West, but that's because of the Nashville Predators, but we'll get to them in a second. Let's talk Edmonton Oilers. Big 5-2 win in Utah. Connor McDavid scored 2 goals. The game-winning goal came midway through the second period. It was his 400th of his career. He corralled a puck that was bouncing like a football and then managed to put a real sweet shot past Karel Vejmelka to put Edmonton ahead to stay. And then he added an empty net goal, and that was his 1,200th point in only 784 games. Only Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux have reached 1,200 points quicker.
And we all know that McDavid is up in today's hockey in 2026. The player born in 1997, being Connor McDavid, is one of today's Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, Sidney Crosby. He is a league-wide phenom, and he is one of the players that has made the NHL as great as it is. It's too bad he's stuck in that situation in Edmonton.
They don't make it, or if they make it and only go a round or so, not going to be his fault because he is trying to carry that team on his back. But besides that, that was a pretty responsible game that Edmonton played on Tuesday in Utah against a good Mammoth team. And every time you write the Oilers off, they give you a good effort. And then every time you're able to exhale, they give you a reason to hold your breath again. But this was a real responsible game in all 3 zones by the Oilers. They protected Tristan Jarry pretty well because Jarry had given up at least 4 goals in each of his previous 6 starts. So this is the kind of defensive game that the Oilers needed and probably somewhat of a blueprint that they're going to need for the rest of this regular season.
And they're going to have to keep on hiding Tristan Jarry so that he doesn't allow the bloopers to go in. And I was surprised. I thought that the Utah Mammoth would beat Edmonton, but this was one of the ones where, you know, Utah didn't keep going in the direction that they had been going up, you know, this past week, and Edmonton stopped going in the direction they were going in, and all of a sudden you get a surprise, and Edmonton plays the way they can and beat Utah right in Salt Lake City.
The Oilers moved past the Vegas Golden Knights into second in the Pacific because the VGK lost in Winnipeg by a 4-1 score. Mark Scheifele, goal, 2 assists, and fought Brett Howden in the second period.
Scheifele does not back down. He's a tough customer. He plays the game hard, and he will not back down. So that doesn't surprise me that he fought Howden.
That empty net goal that he scored secured his 3rd career Gordie Howe hat trick. You know who he passed?
Gordie Howe.
Beautiful. There you go. So Great night for Scheifele. Good night for the Jets. You know, they're still on the fringe. They're trying to push their way up. Will they have enough time to do so? We'll see. But the Jets are 5-3-2 in their last 10. Conversely, the Golden Knights, 3-7-0 in their last 10.
Not playing well and just struggling away. The Golden Knights now go head-to-head with the Edmonton Oilers in Sin City tomorrow night, and that'll be a big one.
Let's hit the wild card because Nashville now with 5 straight wins, 7-2-1 in their last 10. They had a 5-goal first period against the sinking San Jose Sharks, who are on a 5-game losing streak right now. How about the play of Philip Forsberg? 5 goals, 7 assists during this 5-game streak, and they trail Utah by only 3 points for that first wild card position with a game in hand. And of course, the importance there is if you get into wild card 1, you're going to probably see Anaheim in the first round as opposed to being a road apple for Colorado.
If you get into wild card 1, you might end up with more points than Anaheim. And you'll have to give Anaheim home ice because they ended in first. But that's how bad the Pacific Division is that if you're a Central Division team, you could end up with more points than the first place team of the Pacific Division and go to play them in the playoffs in the first round. The one team you don't want to get in the first round, the Avalanche, and whoever ends in 8th spot in the West will get that treat of having to play against Denver.
Those two teams, the Mammoth and the Predators, will play against each other in Utah on April the 9th. Meanwhile, the LA Kings, 3-2 shootout loss in Calgary. By the way, the Flames have been playing very well in the Saddle Dome as of late. They are 20-12-4. But for the Kings, wild card 3, 74 points, 3 behind the Predators and 6 behind Utah.
We have said a couple of times on this show, it doesn't get any easier. But for the Kings, it does get easier because they travel from Calgary, Alberta to Vancouver for a game tomorrow night against the Vancouver Canucks, who they should handle. If they don't handle the Vancouver Canucks, they're in deep doo-doo.
Canucks have been playing hard. They're not winning, but they are playing hard. And I don't see that this is going to be a layup. Now, also in the wild card mix, Seattle with 72 points. They managed to get 1 point in Florida, losing in a shootout 5-4 on Tuesday. They trailed this game 4-1 with 5:43 left in regulation and scored 3 goals within 2:21 to force overtime. Marty Beniers, Jordan Eberle, and Bobby McMahon. The last 2 of those goals on breakaways. And for a Florida team that is the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, we know they're not going to the playoffs this year, but that was kind of a signature of where things have broken down to allow 2 breakaways when you're protecting a lead in the back end of the third period.
It just shows you that they don't have their player personnel that they had when they won the 2 cups, because that wouldn't have happened back then. But how about Bobby McMahon for Seattle? Great pickup for Seattle. He's played really well since he got there. Be interesting to see where he signs in the offseason. Does he stay in Seattle? I was kind of surprised when Toronto traded him, but maybe he told him he wasn't signing there. Who knows?
You make a great point there, but at the end of the show, we're going to come back to Florida also because we want to salute only the second coach in NHL history to reach 2,000 games behind the bench. One of the things that we're going to start doing on a regular basis, and we're going to replay these during the course of the summer, is spring cleaning. And when a team gets eliminated, either through the course of the regular season or the playoffs, we're going to kind of sum up what their season was like in relation to how we saw things when we did our summer coolers back in August. The Vancouver Canucks were the first team eliminated. And that happened on March 22nd. And let's talk about 3 areas here, Neil. the expectation of this season, the reality of this season, and the work ahead for them. The expectations were pretty low. The team had missed the playoffs in 4 out of the past 5 seasons entering this year, the exception being 2024 when they won the Pacific. But you had a lot of stuff that was going on in Vancouver coming into this year. And I remember 2 years ago, I had said, boy, they filled in a lot of blanks after that surprise run to the second round, taking Edmonton to 7 games. And I like that team. But then last year, you had the rift between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. Of course, Miller winds up getting traded for Philip Hedl, and that winds up being a disaster. You had the Brock Besser contract. You had Thatcher Demko's health. And you had the Rick Tocchet contract situation.
And of course, Rick Tocchet, who didn't want to stay in Vancouver, decided he wanted to leave. He's now in Philadelphia, where he was famous as a player. But obviously, he saw something that he didn't like. And with the success that he'd had, he won Coach of the Year there.
Mm-hmm.
He left. So that tells you something. Brock Besser, who said that he wouldn't sign with Vancouver, became a free agent. And then as a free agent, signed with Vancouver. So you get Kiefer Sherwood, who's played really well for them. He gets traded. He's now in San Jose. Probably their best player, a Norris Trophy winner, Quinn Hughes. They think he won't re-sign, so he gets traded, ends up in Minnesota. And not a bad take back for Vancouver. I know there's no Quinn Hughes in what they got, but not bad. And Connor Garland, who had sort of been emblematic of the feistiness of the Canucks and perhaps looking like Judy Garland's munchkins when he's out on the ice, actually gets traded and is doing wonderful things for Rick Bowness and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Also, toss in Tyler Myers, who was traded to the Dallas Stars, and the club has been absolutely dreadful at home. And that's the reality of how far this team has fallen in a matter of 2 years. So there's so much work ahead for this team. The notable UFAs that they have, Vander Kane, Teddy Bluger, and Derek Forbort. Now, they do have 10 picks in this upcoming draft, which is supposed to be a good one. 2 in the first round, their own, and 1 that is acquired through that Quinn Hughes deal. They also have 2 in the second round and 3 in the sixth round. So, former GM, you know how important massing draft picks and these assets are. Is this a good starting point for the Vancouver Canucks?
It's a good starting point for 3 years from now, but it's not a good starting point for next season. It doesn't look good on the horizon. And, all the draft picks are great, but in the league that is today, which is more than just good drafting, it is also having to trade young players to get experienced players to get draft picks to get different players, and signing free agents and enticing them to come to your city, making things that the players want to come to your city, showing them things. There's a lot of different elements of this. It's not just like it was when I was in Detroit in the 80s, and you amass as many picks as you can. You draft as well as you can, and you wait 2 to 3 years down the road and hope you're going to get better. There's a lot of different ways you've got to do it now, and to me, Vancouver's not doing it any of them well.
Personnel notes: Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek both returned to the Wild lineup after missing games with lower body injuries. The Wild, as we'd said earlier, lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning on Tuesday night. Ethan Frank of the Washington Capitals did not play with a lower body injury in the shutout loss that the Caps absorbed in St. Louis. And in that game, Robert Thomas left for the Blues in the third period. He was thrown to the ice by Pierre-Luc Dubois after Thomas kind of threw a pick. He was grabbed by Dubois, thrown down, hit his head on the ice. Dubois was assessed a match penalty for that action, although after the game, head coach Jim Montgomery said that Thomas was okay and had passed concussion protocol.
I didn't get to see that one, but that like a WWE situation there. Pierre-Luc Dubois is not known as the toughest guy in the league, so that's sort of surprising.
It was, and his reaction going to first the penalty box and then being shown the gate for a game misconduct said it all. Coming down late Tuesday afternoon, the Tampa Bay Lightning announced that defenseman Victor Hedman will be taking a temporary leave of absence from the team for personal reasons. And also for the Seattle Kraken, Ryan Winterton, a forward, will also be taking a temporary leave of absence to attend a family matter. He has played in 62 games for the team this year, has 4 goals, 14 assists, logging middle to bottom 6 minutes. And guess who came back into the lineup for the Anaheim Ducks on Tuesday?
Yeah, Captain Gudis.
Returning from his 5-game suspension for ending Auston Matthews' season.
And Ratko Gudis, to his credit, was quoted as saying, "I have to learn to be better."
How long has he been in the league?
Well, it's been 7 years since he got suspended. You got to give him credit. Look, he could have said nothing, or he could have even said, "I didn't deserve it." But what he said was, "I got to learn to be better." And I give him credit for coming out with that with this first game back.
Before we wrap up the show, we mentioned a few minutes ago saluting Paul Maurice. 2,000 games as a head coach in the NHL, second only to Scotty Bowman's 2,141. This is just such a remarkable career, and I'll never forget our discussion with him last year at the trade deadline when they were on the verge of acquiring Brad Marchand from the Boston Bruins.
No, it was great. And he's been around obviously a long time. And you know, he got his first coaching job with the Hartford Whalers when he was only in his 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. In your 20s and you get that chance. And that's because, of course, he had known the owner very well for a very long time. And through their time in Windsor together and so on. But Paul Maurice is a class act. He was great to have on the show. And congrats on 2,000 games.
I think after they got to Game 7 in 2024 against the Oilers, and you thought, boy, if he doesn't win this one after they blew a 3-game lead, he was never going to win a Stanley Cup. And he has now managed to do it in back-to-back years. And look, you know, this year has been what it's been for the Panthers, but it does not take away from the fact that this guy is an outstanding coach. And he was interviewed during the course of the game, and he was asked whether or not he got nervous because this was his 2000th game, and was he as nervous in this game as he was when he coached his very first NHL game. And he said, every game I feel the same way. And what do they say? And I think Phil Borg said it also the other day. When you're nervous, you care.
That's exactly it. When you're nervous, you care. If you don't care, you don't get nervous at all. And Paul Maurice, the reason that he's such a good coach is because he cares so much and wants to win each and every game. He took a lot of criticism when he got that job in Florida. I never forget that. He had been in Winnipeg. He'd left Winnipeg. He said, "I've gotten this group as far as I can get them." And then he gets hired in Florida, and everybody said, "Oh, my God, here's another vanilla coach coming in here to Florida." Well, it hasn't turned out that way. He's been a strawberry sundae.
Oh, that's precious. Reach us individually at neil@NHLWraparound.com or vic@NHLWraparound.com. We are on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube. And if you can, leave a review or subscribe. We can also be found on X, Instagram, TikTok, and at rayd8.tv. Our website is NHLWraparound.com, and in our blog section, Patrick Hoffman's New York Centric. It's been there all year long, so check out his writings, and Smith's Picks, which are also available on audio. So you had this really strong run from Friday to Monday And then, of course, you go to UBS Arena on Tuesday. You leave me behind to kind of tend the house. And I let you down with a 6-7-1 record.
6-7-2, my friend. 15 games last night.
No math.
Tough to get 15 games right, that's for sure. So 6-7-2. But we're still at 483, 267, and 105.
The schedule for Wednesday and Thursday, just 2 games on Wednesday. Big one in Buffalo where the Bruins visit the Sabres. Bruins will be on a back-to-back. Sabres will be rested coming off the road. And the New York Rangers in Toronto. That would have been a really good matchup like 2 years ago.
It would have been, and now it's basically, in terms of a football game, it's the toilet bowl to see who can be worse. My prediction is that because Toronto's on a back-to-back, the Strangers might end up even winning that game. Who knows? I mean, you never know what's going to happen in that game. I'm going to have to pick one of them. I'm just going to have to hold my nose and pick one.
Check out Smith's picks to see which side Neil goes with. 13 games on Thursday. The big ones, Pittsburgh at Ottawa, Seattle at Tampa Bay, Dallas at the Islanders, Colorado at Winnipeg, Washington at Utah, and Edmonton at Vegas. So with that, we'll see you on Friday when we return with Short Chips.